Do you want to tactically move enemies into your allies' area of effect spells? Do you want to break the limits and see how far you can push someone in one round? Are you a content creator that's had a 13-month player option content drought and is running out of ideas for build videos? Totally not me. Then this is the build for you! Hey guys, it's Warners and I'm back with yet another build video for you today. I usually like to have some sort of gimmick or specific thing I'm doing with my character build videos, and today I'm going to see how many feet I can push an enemy in a single turn. There's a few different routes I could have gone with this, and I decided to go mostly with the monk, with a couple of levels in some other classes. And the build just uses 2024 Player's Handbook, subclasses, and content all the way up to the very end of the build. I use one subclass from the old rules. So if you only use the player handbook options, just know that most of the build you'll be able to use. And that subclass just adds a bit more feet to my maximum feet I can push a creature. Just know too, this is a effective character as well. It's not just a pushing character. I made sure that it's playable and it can do a lot more things than just push. There probably is technically a number that is theoretically higher, but based on my calculations, this is the best build you can do with the most amount of feet that actually plays well at a table. Also, just so you know, before I get into it, I have a Patreon down below, and I come out with homebrew subclasses once a month. In this month, I have the Executioner Barbarian subclass, so I'll give a little sneak peek at the end of this video, but you can also check it out down on my Patreon down below. And with that out of the way, I'm going to explain to you the goals I had to reach this goal of maximum pushing power. First of all, I looked at two monk subclasses. There is the Warrior of Elements monk and the Warrior of the Open Hand monk. The Warrior of Elements monk is the obvious choice that I thought of at first, because they get the ability Elemental Strikes at level 3, which basically gives them the ability to push a creature 10 feet every single time they do an unarmed strike. And with Flurry of Blows, that could be 4 unarmed strikes per turn, and eventually at level 10, it would be 5 unarmed strikes per turn, and that would equal 50 feet pushed. But then if you look at the Warrior of the Open Hand, they get a pushing ability, but it only applies to Flurry of Blows. It doesn't apply to your regular attack unarmed strike. But instead of being 10 feet, it's 15 feet. So if you are just using Flurry of Blows, you'll push them 30 feet and eventually 45 feet, which, as you can tell, 45 feet and 30 feet is lower than 50 feet and 40 feet, obviously. But there's other ways to push creatures with your action. There is the push weapon mastery, and if you can find a push weapon with an open hand monk, you can do your unarmed strikes as normal and push a creature 30 feet at level 10, 45 feet. And then if you can use your action to do 2 attacks using the push weapon mastery, you can push them 10 feet for each of those attacks, making it 50 feet with extra attack, and then making it 65 feet at 10th level when you get that 3rd Flurry of Blows attack. So there you go. Open hand monk is definitely the better one to go with, right? Well, then I have the problem with getting a weapon mastery, which monks don't start with, but you know, I can go into fighter or any other class to get weapon masteries. And I decided to go with fighter, but I have another problem. If you look at most of the pushing weapons, they are not finesse, so they use strength. And if I'm a monk, I definitely want to be invested into dexterity. But then I kept looking through all the other push weapons, and I realized the heavy crossbow is a push weapon that scales with dexterity. So we can just go with that. So heavy crossbow with open hand monk, a level in fighter. All right, that's the basis of this build, and I just kind of went from there. And with all that being said, level 1, I decided to start with monk. You can totally start with fighter if you would prefer constitution saving throw proficiency. I went with monk just because I kind of like proficiency in dexterity saving throws, and I'm not going to be concentrating on spells with this build much until maybe later in the build, but it's not necessary at all for the build. So yeah, I'm going to start with monk. For monk traits, I went ahead and went with stealth and athletics, and you also get a tool proficiency. I went with woodcarver's tools just because you can make crossbow bolts with woodcarver's tools, and that would be nice to be able to make those if your DM tracks ammunition. My DM doesn't, and I don't when I am a DM, but you know, some DMs do. So it'd be nice to have. You get martial arts at level 1, and you also get unarmored defense. Most of these abilities you guys are already familiar with, but one important thing I'll mention is I won't be able to wear armor or wield a shield. So even though the Shield Master feat has a pushing ability, I will not be pursuing that feat in this build because it would take away too much from the monk abilities I will be gaining. For background, I'm going to be going with the sailor background. And the narrative I would kind of give to this character is they are a skilled martial artist who decided to live out at sea and being on ships and probably fighting on ships often. A very effective combat style while fighting on ships is probably pushing people into the ocean. So I feel like it thematically makes a lot of sense why this character would be motivated to become a master of pushing people off of things, because they're usually in an environment that pushing people is very advantageous. And that being the case, you actually get the Tavern Brawler feat with the sailor background. You get a few things with Tavern Brawler, but the things that are important to us is whenever you roll a damage die for your unarmed strikes, you can re-roll the die if it rolls a 1, and you must use the new roll. So we got a little bump in damage from that, but also we get push. When you hit a creature with an unarmed strike as part of the attack action on your turn, you can deal damage to the target and also push it 5 feet away from you. You can use this benefit only once per turn. Unfortunately, because we're going to be using our unarmed strikes mostly just with flurry of blows, this actually isn't going to help us very much. So this is mostly for the bump in damage for unarmed strikes, which is pretty small. So this feat is definitely not mandatory, but I decided to go with it because it gives you more options to push creatures in different ways. If you don't want to use your crossbow for some reason, or if there's some reason why you are not able to, and it still does some benefit to your unarmed strikes. So yeah, but you could probably go with a different background if you feel like it, and it probably won't change the build too much. I would recommend, especially if you can do custom background, maybe getting the tough feat would be nice for a melee fighter as you are. But with the sailor background, you're able to choose between strength, dexterity, and wisdom for your ability score bumps. And we're going to be going with a +2 to dexterity and a +1 to wisdom. And for species, we're going to be going with human. This is mostly so that we can pick a second origin feat. And this origin feat is a little more helpful for the build. We're going to go for lucky. This makes it so that we can give ourselves advantage on attack rolls a few times per day, and that'll be very helpful because we're going to be making a lot of attacks with this build, and so it'd be important to be able to give ourselves advantage when we would like it. You also get to gain proficiency in one skill. I went ahead and went with insight just because I feel like it's a nice skill to have, and there isn't much ways to get this proficiency with the other classes we're going into. So yeah, I didn't calculate this into the damage per round or anything, but we also get resourceful for being a human. When we finish a long rest, we automatically get a heroic inspiration. So that is one more extra advantage for our build. So that's nice. For ability scores, I went 8 strength, 15 dexterity with the +2 there, making it a 17, 15 constitution, 8 intelligence, 15 wisdom with the +1, making it a 16, and 8 charisma, using point buy, of course. And for starting equipment, even though you can't use it yet, I would go ahead and grab a heavy crossbow. And that's about all you really need because you're a monk, so you're going to be unarmored anyway. Take the rest of the gold and just have some extra gold. And then I'm going to go through the rest of the levels 1 to 6 on D&D Beyond. So if you really want to get your crossbow and start pushing right away, level 2, I would go ahead and go into fighter, but the order is up to you. And when you go into fighter, go ahead and pick up the archery fighting style. You also get second wind here, which is nice. A nice little bonus action heal and weapon masteries. I'm going to go ahead and go with the heavy crossbow push. And you can go with the Nick property for dagger or scimitar if you'd like. And then the short sword Vex property just to have dual wielding options if you'd like to do that instead, depending on the situation you're in. Then level 2 monk, we get monk's focus, we get our flurry of blows, patient defense and step of the wind, which is nice to have. We also get unarmored movement, which makes it so that we have a 40 feet base movement speed now. But remember, it's specifically when we aren't wearing armor or wielding a shield, so that's important. We also get uncanny metabolism. We get to regain all of our focus points back, and we get to roll a martial arts die and then get that plus our monk level in healing. That's a little nice bonus. This can only be used once per long rest, but this makes our focus points more reliable. Level 3, we get one of my favorite monk abilities in the new player's handbook. Deflect attacks is one of the best defensive options in the game, and we don't have any other use for our reaction in this build all the way to level 20 for the most part. So we're going to be using this almost every turn if we get hit. Here at level 3 though, it's only against bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing damage, but that's okay because that's most damage types anyway. And we get to reduce the damage as a reaction by 1d10 plus our dexterity modifier and monk level. So that is real high, and it scales very well, so that's nice. And then if we want, we can like redirect the blow if we reduce the damage to 0, but I'm probably not gonna be doing that most often. We get our monk subclass, and we are going with the open hand monk, and we get open hand technique, and we have these 3 options: addle, push, and topple. And it is activated whenever we hit a creature with an attack granted by our flurry of blows. And addle or adle, I don't know how to pronounce that really. The target can't make opportunity attacks until the start of your next turn. Push, this is one we're going to be assuming that we're using. The target must succeed on a strength saving throw or be pushed up to 15 feet away from you. Topple, the target must succeed on a dexterity saving throw or have the prone condition. So even though we're maximizing pushing in this build, I could see a playstyle where you topple with the first push, you get advantage on the rest of your attacks, and then you just get to do a ton of damage. But we're going to be assuming you're pushing for the DPR and everything, so just keep that in mind. Also, important thing to note, with this push, there is no size restriction, so that's very good. And then at level 4, we get an ability score improvement. We're actually going to be going with Crossbow Expert. This is so that when we eventually get extra attack at level 5, we can do the extra attack without having to worry about the loading property. So we can go ahead and make 2 heavy crossbow attacks during our turn, which is nice. We also will be able to fire in melee. And even though we're not going to be using hand crossbows, we have the option to use hand crossbows and make an extra attack. With the light property, we can add our ability modifier to the damage of the extra attack. So yeah, might be good to have some hand crossbows just in case we want to do that. Then level 4, we also get slow fall. You can take a reaction when you fall to reduce any damage you take from the fall by an amount equal to 5 times your monk level. And then here at level 5 monk, we go ahead and get extra attack. You can attack twice instead of once whenever you take the attack action on your turn. And we also get stunning strike. We can expend a focus point when we make an attack with a monk weapon or an unarmed strike. The target makes a constitution saving throw. On a failed save, the target is stunned until the start of your next turn. On a successful save, the target speed is halved until the start of your next turn, and the next attack roll made against the target before then has advantage. So stunning strike is nice to have. And one thing to note is when we went with Crossbow Expert, it makes our dexterity +1, so we have an 18 dexterity here at level 6. All right, guys, so I'm going to be going over the DPR. I'm also going to be breaking down sort of the things we're going to be doing every turn. And then this DPR is a 4-round average. And I'm also going to be calculating the PPR, which is a new term I just coined, which is pushing per round. And this is also going to be a 4-round average. I'm going to tell you the initial burst round and then the regular rounds. But with this first breakdown, we don't have action surge yet, so it's all kind of the same. Also, one thing I wanted to mention before going into it, so we are using the heavy crossbow, which does have a size category limit with the push weapon mastery, which is large size. I forget if it's larger or smaller, or if it's one size larger than our character. Either way though, we don't have any inherent way in this character build to become larger, so it is effectively large size is our limit. But I did some math looking at the monster manual, and there is only 68 monsters that are larger than size large out of 510 monsters, which kind of surprised me. I thought there was more larger monsters than there are. So that's roughly 13% of the monster manual, you can't push with the pushing weapon mastery. So that means 87% of the time, especially when you're lower level, you're going to be able to push with the push weapon mastery. So anyway, round 1 starts. You're going to jump into combat. Remember, you can use unarmed strikes with your feet. It doesn't have to be your fists. So even though you have your heavy crossbow in hand, you run up to whoever you're fighting. You're going to bonus action flurry of blows, use your open hand technique. I know it's called open hand, so yeah, it does kind of feel like it should be your hands, but with this character, we're going to theme it as us kicking them. And if we succeed on the first 2 hits, it's going to push them 30 feet back, 15 feet for each hit. And then we're going to use our action and do 2 crossbow attacks with our heavy crossbow, and it's going to push them an additional 10 feet back, making the amount pushed here at level 6 50 feet. And we're going to do the same thing for all 4 rounds. But just to make the math easier, I decided to make the first round of combat, we're going to be using all of our uses of lucky just to kind of get the average damage to make more sense. So assuming we use lucky the first 3 attacks, that makes the damage for round 1 32 damage, and then round 2, 3, and 4 it is 25 damage, with the average DPR here at level 6 being 26.8, which is not super high, not super low, just kind of whatever. All right, so we're done with level 6. Here at level 7, we're going to be going into fighter more, and at level 2 fighter we get action surge, which is great for us. It'll give us a sort of burst round like I mentioned earlier, and we'll be able to, we'll have a little nice couple extra attacks here at the beginning of combat to do an extra 20 feet of pushing, which is great. And then we also get tactical mind. This is a great out of combat ability. We get to use our second wind for ability checks and add a d10. And then at level 3, we get our fighter subclass, and we're going to go with the classic Battlemaster. We get combat superiority, which gives us our superiority dice, which are d8s. We get 4 of them per short and long rest, and then we get to learn 3 maneuvers, and the saving throws for the maneuvers are based off our dexterity, which is great since we have a high dexterity already. We also get student of war. I decided to go with smith tools because I'm pretty sure you can make crossbows with that. You know, it might be nice depending on your campaign. And I decided to go with a survival skill. We have a higher wisdom, so why not? That's a good skill to have. And if you're a sailor out on the ocean, you're probably pretty good at navigating your way around your environment. For maneuvers, we're going to go with pushing attack, obviously. When you hit a creature with an attack roll using a weapon or unarmed strike, you can expend 1 superiority die to attempt to drive the target back. Add the superiority die to the attack's damage roll. The target is large or smaller. It must succeed on a strength saving throw or be pushed 15 feet directly away from you. So there we go. We already got another bonus pushing. And some Battlemaster maneuvers don't work with certain kinds of attacks. This will work with all of our attacks, our unarmed strikes or our heavy crossbow attacks. So that's super good to know. I also added trip attack. This gives us another way to knock targets prone. So we now have 2 different ways to do that. We have the open hand monk ability to do that, and then now we also have trip attack. And then menacing attack, this is just a way to hit a creature with an attack roll and frighten them. And if you don't recall the frighten condition, one of the main features of it is they can't walk towards the creature they're frightened of if they can see the creature. And since we're going to be pushing creatures, this could be a great way to get a creature away from you as the player character and frighten them, and so they cannot go towards you or your party members that are close by. This would especially be good if they happen to be a melee creature that doesn't have any ranged option. So great control there. And then we add a d8 to any of these in damage, so that is real nice. And then at level 4, we also get weapon masteries. I went ahead and added longbow slow, just because, you know, if you have a heavy crossbow, you might as well have a longbow as well. Gives you a bit longer range, and having the slow weapon mastery is just a great weapon mastery to have. And then for the ability score improvement, we're actually going to go with +2 to dexterity. This is so we can get our dexterity to +20. There's a couple feats that I know people will mention in the comments, but I want to explain why I didn't go with them. So first of all, there's the charger feat, which would help us because if you run 10 feet before doing a melee attack, you can push a creature 10 feet away, but it unfortunately specifically only works with melee attacks used with your attack action, so it wouldn't work with our melee attacks used with flurry of blows, and 10 feet is the same as the push weapon mastery, so not very helpful for us. And then there's also Crusher. Crusher though does not give you the option to up your dexterity, it only gives you the option to up your strength or constitution, so it would be at a great sacrifice to our to hit chance, and it would delay getting to 20 dexterity significantly. And the only pushing boost that Crusher gives us is plus 5 feet per turn, which is very low. There is some shenanigans that some people do with the Crusher feat where you can push people up in the air, and yeah, we're gonna assume that that doesn't work, but if you want to do those shenanigans, go ahead and pick up the Crusher feat, delay your to hit chance. But yeah, we're gonna go with the plus 2 to dexterity, and yeah, really helpful. All right, here at level 9, we've gained Action Surge, we've gained Battlemaster Push Maneuvers, and we've capped our dex out to 20. So this improves our pushing and our DPR significantly, especially in the first round of combat. This is our biggest bump in both. So that we can actually hit this target and not be out of range, we're going to open up with Flurry of Blows, push them 30 feet back, assuming we hit both attacks. Then we're gonna use our Heavy Crossbow. We're going to shoot 2 times, then use Action Surge, shoot 2 more times. If you wanna push the maximum amount in this first round, we're going to assume that for those 4 attacks, we use our Battlemaster Maneuver push, or those 4 attacks with Action Surge. That means with each attack, we're going to be pushing the target back 25 feet if they fail, of course, and if it hits initially. So that's not always guaranteed. But if all of that hits in this first round of combat, we're looking at 130 feet pushed, which is pretty crazy. And then after that initial burst round, the rest of the combat, we're going to be doing 50 feet of movement pushed per turn if we hit every time. And for DPR, round 1, that is 72 DPR. And for the rest of the rounds, it would be 29.7, making our average DPR for 4 rounds of combat 40.35. And this math wasn't as exact, but I tried to include our hit chance in the pushing per round. It's around 65 to 70 feet pushed on average in a 4 round. That's pretty sweet. All right, for level 10, 11, and 12, we're going to be going back into Monk. Level 6 Monk, we get Empowered Strikes. Now our unarmed strikes can be force damage instead of bludgeoning damage, which is nice because not a lot, but some creatures are resistant to bludgeoning damage, and this makes it so we can go through that. We also gain another way to bonus action heal ourselves. This is on top of our already Second Wind ability. So yeah, we can number of times equal to our Wisdom modifier, bonus action heal ourselves equal to our martial arts die plus our wisdom modifiers. Pretty nice. We also at level 7 we get evasion. When you're subjected to an effect that allows you to make a dexterity saving throw to take only half damage, you can instead take no damage if you succeed on the saving throw and only have half damage if you fail. You can't do that if you're incapacitated, but yeah, that's a nice little way to avoid damage, and we're already proficient in dexterity saves, so it makes it even more likely to succeed and not take damage, so good for our survivability. And then here at level 8 we get another ability score improvement, and we're actually gonna go with +2 in wisdom. I didn't mention this earlier, but unlike our Battlemaster maneuvers that saving throws scale with dexterity, our open hand technique ability scales with wisdom. So if we want to be able to, at these higher levels, actually be able to push these creatures, we definitely want to get our wisdom up a little bit. And so yeah, that's what we're doing right here. Besides that though, we unfortunately don't add any more pushing ability at this level, but that's okay. We're becoming stronger and we have a more reliable push with that wisdom bump. Here at level 12, we have basically the exact same DPR and PPR breakdown as our previous breakdown, but the AC on average went up. If you haven't noticed, by the way, right here, I kind of scale the AC per level breakdown. Previously, it was AC of 17. Now it's AC of 18. Our proficiency bonus also didn't go up, and neither did our dexterity. So the DPR is actually lower at this level tier with an average of 37.85 DPR. But remember, our Flurry of Blows pushing saving throw DC is now higher. So that's nice. All right, so level 13, 14, and 15, we're going to be getting some nice bonuses. We're going to be going 2 into Monk, and we're actually going to have one more multi-class here. For level 9 Monk, we get Acrobatic Movement. This makes it so that we can run on walls and liquids without falling during the movement, which is nice. And then we get this ability we've been really trying to get, Heightened Focus. This gives us a few bonuses, but the one we're after is now when we use Flurry of Blows, we make 3 unarmed strikes instead of 2. This also means that we now get 15 feet more pushing ability with our open hand technique. Nice little natural scaling there with open hand technique. We also can gain temporary hit points with Patient Defense, which ups our survivability. Also, with Step of the Wind now, we can move an ally with us during our movement, which is also pretty nice to have. And specifically with the Open Hand Monk, we actually get another improvement to Step of the Wind here shortly that will make this Step of the Wind upgrade even better. We also get Self-Restoration here at level 10. At the end of each of our turns, through sheer force of will, you can remove one of the following conditions on yourself: charmed, frightened, or poisoned. And if you don't eat or drink, you do not get a level of exhaustion, which is mostly flavor, but pretty cool flavor, no pun intended. And then we're going to do our last multi-class here, and we're actually going to be going into Ranger. We obviously get spell casting that scales with wisdom. For spells, I just picked Long Strider and Absorb Elements. Absorb Elements will give us a defensive option that's nice. Unfortunately, Deflect Attacks doesn't work for elemental attacks until way higher monk level, and we're not actually going to be reaching that monk level. So this gives us a way to basically have a kind of mini deflect attacks with elemental damage, and we're gonna need it since we're higher level. And we also get Long Strider to add +10 to our movement for up to an hour, which will be nice with this character. We definitely want to up our movement with this character, even though we already have pretty good movement. And then we get Favored Enemy. This gives us free uses of Hunter's Mark, and we also get the Hunter's Mark spell. Because this is such a bonus action heavy character build, I probably wouldn't use Hunter's Mark very often, but if you're fighting one enemy and you want to do a good amount of extra damage and you feel like the combat's going to go pretty long, you're probably going to get some use out of Hunter's Mark. So it's kind of cool that we have the option. We also get even more weapon masteries. I kind of ran out of ideas on what weapons would be nice to have. I went ahead and added the hand crossbow and light crossbow weapon masteries because we already have crossbow expert on this character. So we might as well utilize all the crossbow options that are available to us, you know? All right, here at level 15 for our DPR and PPR. I'm going to start with the pushing. We now get 1 extra unarmed strike with Flurry of Blows, so that ups our pushing per round ability in the initial starting round, first round you could call it. It goes from 130 up to 145 potential pushing power, which is pretty crazy. 145 feet in one round, if you hit every time, of course. But this also means, because we're going to be using Flurry of Blows most likely every turn, our base pushing speed for the non-burst round goes to 75 feet. So most rounds you can probably get around 75 feet of push happening, which is pretty sweet. This makes our round 1 DPR 81.4 and our round 2 to 4 DPR 36.4, and our average DPR is 47.6. Not super high, but again, this is more about pushing than damage. And this makes our average PPR anywhere from like about 90 to 100 feet, which is pretty sweet. All right, for level 16 and 17, we're going to be going into Ranger, and we're going to be going for the Swarmkeeper Ranger. This is the one subclass that is not a part of the new player's handbook. But not to worry, it's technically available to you, but if you don't want to do that, don't worry, you're not missing out on much. I would either go into Monk more or pick a different Ranger subclass that you like, you know? At level 2, we get Deft Explorer. I went ahead and picked Celestial and Abyssal for languages just because these languages are really rare to get otherwise, so it's kind of fun to have them. I went ahead and chose Acrobatics Expertise, but you know, you can pick whatever you want. Stealth, Perception, Investigation, Insight, Athletics. These are all real nice to have. Pick whatever you want. Fighting style, we get a second fighting style. I went ahead and went with Blind Fighting. There just really wasn't many other fighting styles that would help us. Protection is not available to us because we aren't wearing armor. Unarmed fighting is completely useless to us. Same with 2-weapon fighting, thrown weapon fighting, interception, great weapon fight. Like, yeah, all of these are pretty useless to us. And blind fighting is kind of nice to have. And then Ranger's subclass I already said, but we're going to Swarmkeeper. This gives us Gathered Swarm. Basically, you get to choose a sort of thematic appearance of this swarm that you have. A swarm of intangible nature spirits has bonded itself to you and can assist you in battle. While you're alive, the swarm remains in your space, crawling on you or flying, skittering around you within your space. You determine its appearance, or you generate its appearance by rolling on the swarm appearance table. Considering this character being sort of a sailor, piratey kind of vibes, I could see this being something like just kind of water, like floating around you. Could be a storm cloud. It could be some sort of ocean creatures. Either way, though, pick whatever you want for the thematics of this. Actually, put down in the comments what you would make the swarm thematically. I'm kind of curious and would like to know. But once on each of your turns, you can cause the swarm to assist you in one of the following ways. Immediately after you hit a creature with an attack, the attack's target takes 1d6 piercing damage from the swarm. The attack's targets must succeed on a strength saving throw against your spell save DC or be moved by the swarm up to 15 feet horizontally in the direction of your choice. So there we go. We got more pushing power. You are moved by the swarm 5 feet horizontally in a direction of your choice. So yeah, this gives us more push. This also scales with our spell save DC, which is wisdom based, so it's good that we got our wisdom up earlier for that. And then we're not going to be going very high level into this, but we do get access to Fairy Fire, and we now have the Mage Hand cantrip, which are both really good spells. I would honestly consider potentially casting Fairy Fire depending on the combat you're in, because it would be nice to have advantage against creatures with this build. It would definitely up your chance to hit, which will up your chance to push. So yeah, consider doing that. You also get access to more spell slots. I would probably pick something like Entangle. Fog Cloud could be good, especially because you have Blind Sight. Cure Wounds could be good. Detect Magic. There's a lot of good options here, but pick your favorite for those. Honestly, that Fog Cloud is looking really good. All right, so we're here for the level 17 damage per round. We have the Gathered Swarm that adds a 15 feet push. So if you're keeping track, that ups our burst round from being 145 feet to now 160 feet, which is absolutely insane for one round. And since we can do that every turn, it ups our round 2, 3, and 4 to 90 feet per round, which is also insane. The round 1 damage per round, though, is 84.4, and our round 2 to 4 DPR is 40. And then our average DPR is 51.1, and our average PPR is 107 feet. We're here finally at level 20. We just have 3 more levels. I went ahead and went back into Monk a little bit and then capped it out with a final level in Ranger to get a final feat. What we're going to be doing at level 18 is we're going to be getting access to Fleet Step. It says when you take a bonus action other than Step of the Wind, you can also use Step of the Wind immediately after that bonus action. Just to keep in mind, the base use of Step of the Wind is you can take the dash action as a bonus action. Alternatively, you can spend 1 focus point to both disengage and dash as a bonus action, and your jump distance is doubled for the turn. So that means that we are able to use Flurry of Blows and then take a bonus action dash, but also with heightened focus, we can expend a focus point when we use Step of the Wind to disengage, because you can already do that. And then you can also choose a willing creature within 5 feet of yourself that is large or smaller, and you can move the creature with you until the end of your turn. And remember, our base movement right now is 50 feet. So that means every turn that we bonus action Flurry of Blows, we can go 100 feet. And if we want to burn a focus point, we can also bring a friend with us for that whole distance, which is pretty cool, especially for a build where we're pushing people around. Maybe the barbarian wants to stay within melee range with the people we're pushing around, or maybe we want to get a friend out of a area of effect spell and we can push the enemies and bring our friend out of it. So there's a lot of versatility you can do with that, which is super cool and interesting. And then for level 12, which is level 19, we get access to epic boon feats. We're going to go with a pretty basic one. We're going to go with the Boon of Combat Prowess. This makes it so that we can increase one ability score of your choice by 1 to a maximum of 30. We're going to go with Dexterity. This makes our Dexterity 21 with a now 30 cap, which is important. And then we get Peerless Aim. When you miss with an attack roll, you can hit instead. Once you use this benefit, you can't use it again until the start of your next turn. So we get a guaranteed hit once per turn, which is really nice. And then for our final level 20, we're going to go one more into Ranger to get 1 more feat, and we're just gonna do ability score improvement. And now that our dexterity cap is 30, we're gonna get a 22 dexterity, which is real nice. And we're gonna go ahead and go 1 into constitution to up our constitution score to an even 16, so we get a little bit more health, which is nice. All right, so here with the final DPR breakdown, we didn't add any more pushing movement, but because our dexterity is at a nice 22, we have upped our damage because our to hit is much higher now. So yeah, well, technically it's higher by 1, but you get what I mean. That makes a big difference. So the round 1 DPR is 103.8, and round 2 to 4 DPR is 49.8. which makes the average DPR 63.3, which is pretty nice, but our PPR is all the same. I think it would technically be a little higher since we're hitting more often, but yeah. Let me know down in the comments if you have a build that can push farther than 160 feet in 1 round. And before you head out, I want to let you know a little bit more about my Path of the Executioner Barbarian. This is a barbarian that through years of practice, their quote-unquote rage is more of a concentrated focus as they concentrate on decapitating their foes. This allows them to be a little bit more accurate when they're raging, adding their rage bonus damage to their to hit. They also get an ability to strike fear into the hearts of their enemies when they drop a creature to 0 hit points. And at later levels, they can forego one of their attacks to enhance Brutal Strike to be an even more brutal strike, with one of their capstone abilities being able to guarantee a critical hit once per long rest. This barbarian was a blast to make, and I originally was making it a fighter, but then barbarian just made so much more sense to be the executioner rather than the fighter. I come out with these PDFs once a month. This one I was going for a somewhat spooky theme with it being October. And if you guys want to check those out, just go ahead and go down below and check out my Patreon. If you go with the Vanguard tier, you will also get access to all of my other PDFs, as well as any new ones I come out with every month. Thank you guys so much for watching, and if you like this video, consider subscribing, and I'll see you guys next time. Go ahead and check out this Warlock tank build that I did a while ago. I think you'd like it. Peace out.